Workers' Memorial Day. I look at one of my favorite people in the entire labor movement, Ben Speight. He was down in Atlanta organizing port truck drivers to get out in the streets, talk about Workers' Memorial Day, but also talk about, I'm a worker and should be classified as such. Ben, thanks for taking time for us.
It's always good to be with you, Rick.
I look at these movements of the past, be it the Coxey's Army, be it the Bonus Army, be it any of these movements that get people into the streets, and to me, good sign to move things forward.
Yeah, I think that there's a connection between the past struggles, popular movements in the United States and throughout the world of demanding status from the state, demanding rights from the state, that the state that we have created, this government that we have formed in our interest, to act in our interest, should do so, and not in the interest of money and corporate power. And from veterans to the women's movement, we see in the immigrants' rights movement, and civil rights, and now with port truck drivers and many others are saying, where do workers' rights not apply to? Do they not apply to me when my employer sets up a temporary work arrangement and calls me a temp? Do they not apply to me when they force me to sign a lease agreement to be a so-called independent contractor truck driver, that I can't come together and bargain over my wages and working conditions? So what we're seeing right now in L.A., they're engaging in a 48-hour work stoppage at 3 companies in Los Angeles as we speak.
Yes.
And in Savannah, Georgia, all the way across the country, we organized a rally against employee misclassification and in solidarity with those striking L.A. drivers. And it's really a powerful moment when these drivers are coming together. And in this case, in Savannah, it's mostly African American drivers and others that are organizing. And in Los Angeles, it's a mostly immigrant workforce and other drivers of color that are coming together. So it's really a powerful example of how people can overcome social differences to find commonalities with the same demand. Treat us as employees, give us employee rights, Rick.
Yeah, as I've always said about race, I grew up in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland, and I was one of the very few white kids in the neighborhood. So I was the minority, but I learned very quickly black and white didn't matter as much as green. And I think economics is more important than anything. And I think the issues that we need to be focusing on as a working class is, how do we close that gap of inequality? How do we make sure that someone who is a port truck driver is treated with dignity, respect, and able to support their families?
The question of employee misclassification and the scam that employers have set up and have abused weak regulation and weak labor law enforcement is that they have said that there can be a class of workers that they will be able to exploit in an extreme fashion, to say that you can't even come together. If you're an independent contractor and you wanted to come together with other independent contractors and, say, negotiate a rate for your work, these employers will threaten to sue you under the Sherman Antitrust Act.
Right.
They will seek to prosecute you, and that's what we've seen with port truck drivers that have sought to organize as independent contractors, when really those efforts never really address the root of the problem, which is that employers are seeking to take advantage of these loopholes to mislabel you so that they can exploit you. And what we see is that those folks that have been misclassified come from all different kinds of backgrounds. But it is common in places like Savannah that it is a majority African-American workforce, because, you see these kind of patterns replicate of long hours for low wages with no rights, no voice. And these drivers are just coming together, black and white and brown, in both coasts, just saying that the era of employee misclassification is over.
How prevalent?
And we're starting to see the tide change on that, though, Rick.
Yeah, how prevalent is this misclassification? And the other question is for taxpayers, because there are a lot of people go, "Wow, that's not me. Why do I care? What's my interest in this?" Because we have to bring everything back to self-interest at some point.
Sure.
How prevalent is misclassification, this independent contractor status, and what does it mean to the taxpayers?
Well, just in the port trucking industry, in and of itself, there are tens of thousands of drivers throughout the country that have been unlawfully misclassified as independent contractors when, in fact, their employers control everything about what they do, set the rates that they work for, direct them what they do, can hire and fire them. But it's actually this scam and misclassification is rife in many industries, including the construction industry and many others that working people are in. And it's only growing until we can see the U.S. Department of Labor and other agencies really crack down on this, and Congress should take action. But we can safely say there's thousands of workers throughout the country in many industries that are impacted by this. But going to your question, states are losing millions of dollars in revenue because these companies are not paying, for instance, in Georgia, unemployment taxes. They're not paying for workers' compensation. And in Georgia, like many states, see this budget shortfall, and they determined that, well, instead of increasing the revenues to our unemployment fund, why don't we just cut unemployment benefits? Or why don't we require drug tests for unemployment recipients so that they get kicked off the rolls? Or why don't we make it more difficult for people to actually qualify for unemployment benefits, or cutting the number of weeks that they were able to receive it? And that's just the backwards, austerity-driven worldview that they have to attack the poor, rather than looking at corporations and companies that aren't playing by the rules. They're not playing on a level playing field, whereas many of our employers, Teamster employers, who do classify us as employees, are paying unemployment tax, as they should. These trucking companies are operating in the shadow of the law, not paying their fair share. So that's why in Georgia, with the work of our local union, Teamsters Local 728 and allies, we were able to introduce two pieces of legislation in the state Senate, which is kind of a rare thing for us to do in the South and in Georgia, for the labor movement and allies to actually propose legislation in a state that has a Republican constitutional majority and a Republican governor. But we did introduce it, and we will bring these two bills up again next year. Hopefully, as we build more and more of a coalition around trying to stop misclassification in our state. But those bills address that question and empowers the Georgia Department of Labor to find companies and audit them based upon allegations of unemployment fraud and failing to pay their fair share. But it really touches on the whole spectrum of responsibilities that employers have to pay into the system that workers rely on. And just yesterday, we were at our rally in Savannah, 150 to 200 port drivers from 8 to 10 a.m. rallied at one of the main terminal gates, the Port of Savannah. And one of the drivers that came out, Rick, was a brother they call Pony Boy. That's his handle out there. He's a port driver. He came out there in a wheelchair. He has multiple herniated discs. He's unable to stand and to walk on his own. And what happened to him was he was actually he fell off a container while working at the port.
Wow.
And because he's misclassified as an independent contractor,
SOL.
Pony Boy didn't have workers' compensation insurance. His employer doesn't pay for workers' compensation insurance. So Pony Boy is out of luck. Now, luckily, he had some insurance on his own, but it's nothing to the standard what a regular employee would have if they're properly classified. And that's what we're trying to address. We're trying to, this movement, this Justice for Port Drivers movement, is an example of saying that we want to expand rights to all workers, particularly in such an important sector of the economy like America's ports.
Yeah, and just to me, just the dignity and the respect of it. I mean, you look at this guy. He's working for this company, and he is, because they, like you said, they set all of the conditions. They say when he can't take a day off when he wants to, because I've talked to a number of the port drivers, and they say, look, I don't have any freedom to take a day off if I want to. I don't have any freedom in my schedule. I can't make any decisions. How is it that I'm my own boss when I can't direct myself? And here's this guy who, as you pointed out, he gets injured and he's screwed, and in a big way. And then you bring that back to the taxpayers, because eventually then that comes back on the taxpayers, because I hope Georgia has some safety net programs for food stamps and Medicaid and some other things that will help take care of him. But it shouldn't have to be that way.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, we're the right wing and their corporate funders have created this mythology of going into business for yourself, or we're also told go get a craft, go learn a skill, and then we're also told, well, if you don't, then you're going to be on the government's dole and you're going to be standing in line for a welfare check. Working people can't get it right in the corporate media. We're always to blame, and despite all of our efforts to go out there and get a commercial driver's license, to take out a loan from a trucking company to pay for our trucks so that you can go down the road of saying that you're your own business owner by actually one day paying that truck off. It's like the old carrot and stick metaphor. They'll work that mule chasing that carrot as long as they can, and as soon as the mule stops working, they'll beat them with a stick. Workers have been sold this dream, and when the trucking industry was deregulated in 1980, of going in, setting up a business for yourself, running your own business. And what these drivers have learned is that they've actually entered into contracts of servitude to trucking companies, that they can't go out there and just offer their services to other firms. They're signed exclusive haul agreements that require them to drive exclusively for these companies who set the rates for them. It's a form of usury, really. Yeah. And so these drivers have now understand that there is a strategy to address it. It's not just about having one-off strikes or one-off actions that let out frustration. A lot of times when workers come to me, Rick, and want to organize, they come to me obviously with their backs in a corner. They want to fight, and some of them are talking about quitting. Where we got to do something big now, or this is our only opportunity. The reality is that the way that workers win, and the way that any of us achieve anything, is with a plan and is with a strategy to win. We don't fight just to fight; we fight to win. And now that these port drivers have had many attempts in the past, I mean, your listeners, I know, are not new to the labor movement. They have heard about port truck drivers trying to organize before with the Teamsters. The difference now is that we are addressing really the root of the question, and that is we need labor law enforcement. We need a regime in our country that says that you can't skirt the law, you can't exploit a group of workers simply because you mislabel them. And if our agencies like U.S. Department of Labor need more resources to enforce the law, well, we need to give it to them.
Absolutely.
And if Congress needs to enact new laws that say that workers that are so-called independent contractors have rights to organize, and they need to enact those laws. But we see the same question coming up, for instance, with student athletes at Northwestern University. We see that, are these folks student athletes? Are they student athlete employees? And the National Labor Relations Board, around the same time, within the week, ruled that student athletes at Northwestern University have a right to an NRB election. Just last week, they had their secret ballot election. We know those ballots have been impounded, pending appeals from the university. But in the same week, a region of the National Labor Relations Board in Southern California ruled that a group of port truck drivers are employees under the National Labor Relations Act and also have a right to organize. Workers that were formerly claimed by their employers not to have that right. So we're winning on these issues. The more that we say that more workers should have the right to form a union, and we make that the question, the more that we're prevailing. In Savannah, there is the U.S. Department of Labor is investigating two companies right now, two trucking companies, for failing to pay the minimum wage. And you wonder how that is possible when these drivers are hauling containers for some of the largest global retailers in the world, from IKEA and Target and Home Depot. Billions of dollars of freight coming in and out of the fourth busiest port in the United States.